I think you're going to really appreciate this chapter on synchronizing logic with external devices. Now, this is something new to me. As always, I'm always on the path of growth, of learning, student first, and always just trying to get ahead. It's a game of inches, as I always say. So let's go ahead and finish off this particular chapter that we're working on, and then we're going to be synchronizing. Let me show you my desktop here. Logic, as you can see, it's currently running. We're going to synchronize it with a program that is called Steps. And this is my iPad Pro that you're currently looking at. So this is going to be fun. Let me go ahead and just organize myself here. Bunch of screens going on at the same time. Okay, this should do it. All right. So let's read a little bit here. Let's finish up what we were doing last time around. As you may have remembered, we were working with film, with movies, and we brought in different pieces of media by going to File, Movie. There's also a key command for that. I imported something that I had prepared in advance, which is right here. The first time around, for whatever reason, it did not extract the audio, but if you enable that, then it will keep the audio intact in your session. You don't have to use it, but bear in mind that it is SMPTE locked. And then we started playing with all the various ways of editing, or should I just say resizing the media file, because you cannot edit per se. You can just resize from the left border and the right border. Okay, and let me just make sure. Yeah. All right. So then from there, we talked about exporting. Once you create your composition, once you create your media, you go to movie and you go to export audio to movie. And the most important thing here is that you save this somewhere, of course. Find it, so I'll save this and I'll call it, let's just call it test. Pretend I wrote a bunch of music to it. And then this dialog window comes up. And if you leave this enabled, the original audio that came with the media file will also play back. So you're going to want to disable that, and then everything kind of should work out the way it needs to. All right, so let me remove this movie here. In fact, let's leave it in just in case, and let's finish up this chapter. And yes, we're looking at the same thing. Great. All right. So we left off talking about absolute time code, right? We can work in musical time and we can work in absolute time. When you're working with film, when you're working with media, you might want to work with absolute time. We talked about the event list in Logic Pro is ideal for precise placement of timing critical events, such as footsteps, dialogue in the video soundtrack. It also allows you to change event lengths, which is useful. So a lot of people will ask me, why do we need the event list editor? And I will constantly tell them there are specific purposes, and I will show you one right now. So if I hit the key command D, you will see the event list editor. There's other tabs as well, but if you want to troubleshoot, let's say, I know there's not, but let's say there was a file underneath this file and I couldn't find it. Right now at the moment under drag, I have no overlap, but let's say by mistake I somehow selected overlap, which isn't impossible in one of my sessions because of the way I route things and I set things up. But now if I look at the event list editor, I can see clearly it's not just one file. I can see that there are two files here. And unless I had seen that, it would be difficult to distinguish for some. And so you can see that there's a lock at the moment right here. And if I simply click on that, it now turns off SMPTE, so it's no longer in SMPTE lock. You can also control click, go to SMPTE lock and lock it or unlock. Also, let's see, command page up, page down will render the same kind of result. So the event list editor is really good for troubleshooting this area of the program. So then they start talking about changing the event list to display time units. Because right now we're looking at musical time, right? It's not the same system, right? Tomatoes, tomatoes. And so we'll go to view and we will say, let's see, let's look at absolute position. No, wait, that was the wrong one. Event position as time. So then now if a car crashes at 29 seconds, I can enter, I believe it's 0.0.29, and I believe that should give me what I want. No, it absolutely didn't. Yeah, there. See, and then that specific media file would stop at 29, and then I would have that explosion. So there's a lot of control here in terms of how you place things and how you position things. We can also move, and we would resize here on the right-hand side. Let's see. Yeah, like that. Okay, what else? Lock a region or event. So this is, in fact, SMPTE lock. There's a key command. We can control click as I showed you. Looks like copies of locked regions or events do not preserve their lock status. So if I copy something, not going to be SMPTE locked. So you want to make sure that that you enable that if you do want it to be SMPTE locked, that you set that up. To unlock, very much the same thing, just do the opposite. Move a region or event to a frame. Logic Pro set the playhead position to the desired time. So let's say, in fact, I should probably go over here, impact. Again, going back to my example of some kind of impact. Let's say there was something in our film. I know this is a pretty chill piece of media just overall, but let's say I wanted something to pick up and to be placed directly in that position, right? It's not about the grid, it's more about the event per se. There's different ways to do that. So it says here, in addition to the usual position commands, you can use rewind one frame or forward one frame to move by frames. And so if you've ever gone into Snap, you will see an option to move by frame. And so that is obviously extremely relevant when working with film. Something else that you might want to chew on is the nudge value can also be set up by frame, by sample. Okay. And we can use the pickup clock, which is semicolon. Look, this is really nice. So again, let's say there was an explosion here. I click on the region. It is now in focus. I hit semicolon. Boom, that moves over right on the spot. Not necessarily because it was perfectly in time with musical time, right? The beginning of bar one. It's just that it fit in that specific instance. And of course, if you wanted to, you can then edit and get more precise. And then I would hit the pickup clock again. In a situation like this, this is when it's useful to understand drag mode. If you're not a novice or a professional, do not use this. So I will shuffle left in this instance. Now check this out. When I edit, this is going to kind of pick up for me, and it's going to make the adjustment for me. So if you're not sure what happened there, just avoid it altogether, but it's a really nice feature. Let's see here. Position a bar to a specific time. All right. Create a tempo event at the top. Okay. So set a time position for the tempo event in the SMPTE. Let me just kind of take one thing at a time. So let's say during this impact, we wanted to set a bar to a specific time. We can see that clearly this is not kind of in uniform time, right? So again, I'll hit the key command D rather, go into the tempo marker list, and quite literally just create a new position here, a new time position. And then let's say we wanted this to be at a different tempo. We can make that adjustment as we know. So if I click, let's see. Good. Hold on, let me just signature. Okay, good. And then if we wanted to change, let's say, the key here or the time signature, we can kind of do this work here in tandem. All right. Then it says here, set a time position for this tempo event. The preceding tempo event is automatically adjusted to generate the correct bar and insert the time position for the inserted tempo event. Okay, so yeah, let's say I inserted this at bar 6, beat 3, division 1, tick 1. Maybe, let me delete this. Let's say it was just a little bit more unorthodox, right? Just like somewhere like in here. Let's see what this yields. Okay, and even then, it's still kind of on the grid. What does something like that look like? Okay, now we're talking. This is kind of an unusual place. So I will click here, and then let me just delete one of these. and then I'll just change the time, or the tempo rather, okay? And then now you can see that this is kind of shifted in our favor. Okay, good, and then adjust it to generate the correct bar time position for the inserted. If you want to keep the same tempo for the following passage, delete the tempo event you inserted. Let's see, I just want to see one more thing. Scroll and play, secondary ruler. All right, so then now we're looking at two rulers, the musical time and then the absolute time. And this is obviously pertinent when you want things to lock into things that don't fall like on the grid per se, and you're trying to make musical sense of kind of different time signatures. And so this is when you would implement this methodology. So maybe, let's see, we go through another change. It happens here. So again, go to tempo, hit that, right? We would change whatever needs to be changed. See how everything on the right is changing accordingly, because everything in the left is already locked to its appropriate tempo. And so all the changes are being made kind of underneath the surface. Let's open up that, okay? And so that's how you would navigate these waters. So we know that the time changes here, and this would then fall in line with bars, beats, divisions, ticks. So let me just kind of, just by way of example, of course, this isn't really going to make literal sense, but let me just go ahead and move this over. And so we're trying to lock this to the grid, or at least, you know, this unique grid. So if I click on here, 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 all right, so there's that specific change. Then I would hit the pickup clock, and then now everything is in time according to our layout. So it does require some work. You can play with it, but yeah, you're going to need to learn how to use pickup clock and learn how to change tempo, signature if necessary. And, you know, it's another way of using the program. Okay, we do have to get into synchronization. So the way I have this set up is I have, let's break this down. I've got Edgar Rothermic's GEM manual just in case we need it, because it's got so much useful information and it's very easy to digest. Highly recommend his work. Check him out. On the other hand, we also have an iPad hooked up here. I'm going to send external hardware sync. I'm going to bypass that really quick because you can hear that it's sending a signal. And I'm going to work on connecting an external piece of, if I can call it a piece of hardware, but basically MIDI. It's a MIDI message that's being sent out. And then I'm going to try and have that communicate and talk to Logic Pro. Let's see how this goes. So for now, I'm going to hide this. Okay, this is a great little program called Steps. If you're interested in just having a kind of step sequencer to work with, it's just new creative possibilities, really. So I should probably get rid of all this stuff. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Let me delete a couple things here. Okay, cool. And then in terms of the movie, if you may have remembered, if you go to File, Movie, Remove, I believe you can also remove by hitting the up and down arrow menu and removing this flick. Okay, so let me reset all tempo information because I really want this to lock in and I want it to work. So I'm going to double click here, hit 110, and then key command F. Okay, so we're back to normal. A couple of things that we need to think about. Inside of project settings, we have the synchronization settings. And then if I go to my preferences, I also have settings that pertain to MIDI and sync. So we're going to have these two kind of side by side. And right now I'm going to hit send external hardware sync from the app. And so sending a message to the program. And then from this place, we're going to do our best to decipher this part of the program. If I unmute this track, you'll hear that it's already sending signal. Now remember, it's just MIDI, so if I change the sound, that's going to be reflected here. Check this out. I hear a trap song there. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off because obviously we need to concentrate. And if I leave that playing on in the background, it's going to feel like a haunting score for a movie. And so let's get into Logic Pro synchronization, shall we? Here we go. Logic Pro supports most synchronization protocols, allowing you to synchronize it with external hardware and software. Logic Pro can transmit synchronization data to other devices or receive synchronization data from another device. We can use the SMPTE function, as we have already learned, in all synchronization situations, regardless of their simplicity or complexity of your studio configuration. The following rules apply. All right, there can only be one transmitter. Thank you, Logic, right? Saying, hey, just want to let you guys know, regardless of how cool you are, how great your studios are, only one transmitter device. The transmitter device sends timecode information to one or more receiver devices. Okay. In most cases, you will need to manually set each synchronization capable device, including Logic, to transmit or receive. That's kind of the idea here. Something's going to transmit, something's going to receive. If you don't do this, there will be multiple transmitter devices in your system, which will result in synchronization errors. I am by no means an expert in this whatsoever. I experiment, I try, I do my best to learn something new, to increase my value, so that if something ever comes up, if I'm ever in a situation, I'm not completely in the dark. Now, of course, you better believe that if I had a situation that would change my life, that could alter the course and the trajectory of my career, that I would learn this to, you know, to a bloody pulp. I would spend every single day, every single minute, spend my natural life working on it to become the very best at it. But because this isn't a big part of what I do, there really is no need for the investment. But with that being said, this may be a gigantic part of what you do, and you're looking to learn it. And so this is a great first step. All right, so we're going to look at the protocols. Think of this like a language, right? So you got Mandarin, you got English, you got all kind of different languages in the world, Spanish. And so now we're going to learn these different languages within synchronization. So we have MTC, and if we look at the work of Edgar Rothermick, basically says that MTC, otherwise known as SMPTE sync, can be pretty much hooked up between video machines and audio machines. So I believe this has something to do specifically with video, CD players, things like that. Again, I could be wrong. This is kind of a first time introduction into this whole world. I've done some syncing, but nothing serious. It's the first time I'm reading the user guide along with you. This is why we're doing this together. Okay, so that's one protocol. If you're not hooking up this kind of stuff, I suggest perhaps we move on. Of course, if you just want to try anything, then, you know, give it a shot. But there's other protocols that are mentioned in Edgar Rothermick's book, The Details, that are not mentioned here. We're just going to go over the user guide material. Something called MIDI clock, which is a short MIDI message for clock signals used to provide a timing pulse, such as you heard a little bit earlier. Logic Pro can send MIDI clock. Logic Pro cannot receive MIDI synchronization signals. Okay, good to know. So, see, that was called MIDI clock, and that's right here is a protocol to sync tempo information between devices. Logic can only be the master. The Logic is king in this situation. What else do we got? SMPTE timecode. I don't know if that is, yeah, I don't see that being supported here. An audio signal that is translated into MTC by some MIDI interfaces, such as the Unitor 8. That's a great name. So yeah, still don't understand specifically the difference between these. I imagine it has to do with machines, their capability, when they were created, and, you know, all the language that was being spoken back in those days. By those days, I mean the 80s. Word clock. Okay, let's look at Edgar Rothermick's book here. Word clock is not really a sync protocol to maintain the same time position. It is a sync mechanism that is necessary to send digital audio signals between different devices without clicks and distortion. So here with Logic, it says it's signal that is carried by all digital audio interfaces, talking ADAT, Firewire, all the rest, used to maintain the timing integrity of sample words in audio signals that are transmitted digitally between Logic and external hardware. Logic Pro supports manual or human sync when receiving synchronization. This is not a synchronization protocol per se, but enables Logic Pro to follow tempo changes in real time. It could chase a live drummer. Wow. Okay. So we're going to take this slowly. We're going to take it easy. I do want to show you this before we start. Okay. So this can be as complicated or as easy as you want it to. It says here, might be necessary to connect Logic to other hardware or software devices. Anytime you want to have two or more devices play together, you're dealing with synchronization. So this is why you're watching this. When you are watching this, and this is why you're sharing, because you know somebody that's been trying to do something like this, he's been trying to connect his or her iPad, they've been trying to figure out the methodology. Like, man, this guy Eddie Gray's on it. He's working on it. He does it with you. And so here we are. All right. So when you first open Logic Pro, it is internal sync. The control bar sync button is visible, is not activated. Let's go to Logic. If you don't see this blue button on your screen, control click the control bar, go to customize control bar and display, and then enable that within modes and functions on the right hand side. That is there, right next to tuner, which I'll turn off, and right next to solo, which I will turn off. Okay, so that's on. If I take that away, playhead looks the way it usually does. And then when I click it and enable it, you can see that we have gone from internal to MTC. When Logic Pro is receiving synchronization, the control bar sync button is activated. Okay. You can use the sync button to turn external synchronization on or off at any time without changing the selected synchronization source. This allows you to temporarily stop Logic from receiving synchronization from an external device. In my case, I think because I have this connected to my MIDI interface, I'm still receiving the MIDI. Stop Logic from receive. Well, but I guess receiving synchronization is different than receiving MIDI, isn't it? In fact, let's fact check that. I'm really curious about this. I'm gonna open up my iPad. Hear that sound? So if I hit that Logic button, oh, we're still here. Okay, well, turn this off. This is not gonna work. All right. So this could prove useful, for example, if you need to quickly edit a MIDI region while the external synchronization source, the tape machine, VTR, does anybody know what that is? Hit me up in the comments, is still running. You can use a sync button shortcut menu to choose a synchronization source. So there's a sync button shortcut menu. I believe we would control click here, and now we have a shortcut menu. It's interesting now that I think about it. They offer the tempo list, the tempo operations, tempo interpreter. Tempo list is Option Shift T. Cool, I did not know that. All right, so you know where the sync button is now. You know how to turn it on. We're going to open synchronization settings with the sync button. So again, we would control click, and you have the option. By default, it's on internal. It looks like they got rid of one method. Manual still there. MTC is still there. And it looks like they got rid of auto sync in. Determine if MMC commands should or should not be transmitted when using the Logic Pro. MMC, what does that stand for? So this is usually when I go to Edgar's books. MMC is also a MIDI-based protocol. Sends transport controls and other commands via MIDI between DAWs and tape machines. So I guess if you're using two or more DAWs, so in my case that doesn't really apply, I think, but we shall see. Open the synchronization settings in Logic Pro, and bear in mind you've got the project settings which handle the synchronization, but then here if you go to MIDI, you can open up the MIDI sync preferences, and so these are going to be related just as a whole. All right, we can view the frame rate of incoming MIDI timecode. So click the upper MIDI in section of the MIDI activity display while receiving an external synchronization signal. MIDI in section of the MIDI activity. Not sure if they're talking about here. Oh. MIDI reset. Not sure what they're talking about. All right, MTC interpretation. So again, MTC is SyncSync. MIDI standard supports 4 of the 7 commonly used timecode formats. So again, going back to frames, this is all that world. So you get all these various frame rates. MIDI timecode is the MIDI equivalent of the audio-based SMPTE. All right, that's cool. That's a good quote. So MIDI timecode is basically the same concept as the audio-based SMPTE. Manually set a frame rate. We can also do that inside of project settings. MIDI machine control. So again, MMC. Let's go back to this list. I get the illustration. So I look here and I'm like, all right, cool. That's for like tape, right? Sends transport control so I can play back another DAW. Set of MIDI commands that Logic Pro uses to control the transport functions of any MMC capable tape machine. The recording process can also be controlled and automated from Logic Pro. My question is, in my situation where I'm using an iPad, is this the relevant protocol? Because it really is hard to tell. And somebody like me, the way that I would do this is quite literally just play with all of the various configurations and make something work. So like I have MTC, I got it to work decent. I think we shall see. But again, if we go to the work of Edgar Rothermick, I'm using SyncSync, which is for video machines, audio machines, and I'm using an iPad. So we'll see how this goes. Can also be controlled and automated from Logic. Okay, the tape machine provides a SMPTE signal that Logic Pro uses as synchronization source with Logic as the receiver. You control connected device from Logic Pro by using the control bar, navigation functions. This would include direct positioning, cycle jumps. Dragging the playhead sends a continuous stream of MMC locate commands until you release the mouse button. Logic Pro needs to wait for the connected devices to finish rewinding or forwarding. This is amazing. I've never had a tape machine connected to my system, but wow, wouldn't that be incredible? Like you just record guitars or something for a session just for fun, and then you bring in that information into your DAW. That'd be amazing. All right, control click the, we talked about all the various settings here as well. So setting up a MMC tape machine. All right, I don't have an MMC tape machine, so we're not going to do this, but that's some good stuff for you if you want to get into it. It says here that if you're going to do it, you group tape control tracks in a folder. Tape control tracks must be placed at the top of the track list. If you pack tape control tracks into a folder, this folder must be at the top. Okay. That's awesome. You know, who knows? Maybe one day we'll do it on the channel. But for now, let's see. So now they're talking about record enabling MMC, make an MMC recording with Logic Pro. So again, going back to tape machines, if this is something that interests you, it's really not going to help our cause here. You're really not going to see anything. So this is something that we're going to have to gloss over. Let's talk about problems and potential solutions. Due to the number of synchronization types available and different implementations by various manufacturers, music, you may experience timing issues when using Logic Pro synchronously with other devices or apps. This table describes common sync problems and solutions. All right, so you'll see this one here, and this one basically means that if Logic Pro is synchronized to an external word clock, it's going to be audio sync mode, external or free. And by the way, every interface, if you have an interface, has kind of a version of this. How good or how great it is, I don't know. Depends on the manufacturer. But there is a school of thought that claims that the better the word clock, the better it sounds. Again, it's not what I do, so you might want to ask somebody that knows about that stuff. But it is a thing. It seems to be a kind of popular thing too. Make sure that a valid digital signal is always available. If you see a sample rate, this thing, error message, the clock source device connected to your audio hardware digital input may not transmit word clock and stop or pause, or has switched itself to off. Okay, so that's a potential issue. Poor or no synchronization. I have not seen this, but it pertains to tape. MIDI and audio are not synchronized. So if you go to synchronization in project settings, audio pane, and choose MTC continuous and MTC trigger, auto speed detection mode in the core audio pop-up menu. This seems to be a solution for this. If your audio hardware doesn't support either mode, you should cut extremely long regions into shorter sections. Okay, and then MIDI and SMPTE are not synchronized. Here's another solution for that. I've not run into any of those. Oh, is that it? Wow. No information? Okay. I was expecting just some workarounds, but it's okay. So here we go. Let me just show you what I did and how I hacked this. Again, massive disclaimer. This is not what I do. This is not what I work on, what I understand. I am just a committed student of the game. That's it, just like you. We're on the same plane. I always come back every single day and I work. And so if this can help, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 people, whatever the number is, I'm not overly concerned with that. I just know that people are enjoying the content, and moreover, I am committed to my commitment, which is to read this entire thing 6 days a week until we are done and complete. By the way, just a quick progress report to those of you that want to register for all of the free content that we're offering soon. This is Logic Pro training. It's going to be 10 free courses so that you can become a Logic Pro powered user. You can watch the entire series that I've created here. All right, you can do that. That's fine. But I've condensed a lot of this information so that you can ingest it in bite-size time frames. And so just want to make sure that if you're ready to take your learning to the next level, you want to pre-register. We are taking people on right now. So go ahead and email support@hfmusicacademy.com. Okay. So how I did this. I have this muted because otherwise you continue to hear it. And I went into sync mode MTC. And then, of course, I start kind of like going over everything and doing my best to decipher how to, get this to connect. I don't have this connected to my iPad. I have this connected to my MIDI interface. And my MIDI interface, the specific route or port that I have this connected to is Ethernet 4. And I'm going to corroborate this in a second here. So then the main clock is Logic. I would think that that's the setting for that. Again, it doesn't say. So and then I send the original signal, in this case MTC, I send it to wherever it is that. So this may or may not work for you. I just want to be clear, but I think I got it to work on my end. And at the very least, you can see the way that I troubleshoot and see if maybe this helps you. I didn't find this area to be at all useful for me. I think this has to do with something else. Like we didn't get any information on the user guide, and this has actually been developed and refined over time, so I can understand why it's not in the user guide. But of course, at some point it will be updated. That's going to be great. And so then the last thing to look at is just here inside of sync in preferences. I just start playing kind of with this, and I know I'm not using that, and so then at this point I just kind of hope for the best. If there's any delay, I'll play with some of these delay parameters, but I think I got it working pretty good. Let's see if this is true. So sync is on. Again, if I hit that button, it's off, and so now we're in that sync mode per se. And so then if I turn this on, okay, and I'll turn the volume down just so we can chat. And so here's the click. And when I unmute this, let's see if they're in line. That's pretty good. It's not bad. And so then, let's say we were recording something. I would, let's do pattern, and let's go there. All right, and let's go ahead and record this. Ready? Hit R and then spacebar. Okay, let me mute that. Now remember, I'm sending this from an external MIDI controller. So At this point, if I no longer want to sync it, I would turn that off. I believe in my system you're still going to hear it. And again, that's simply because I'm connecting this in a different way. But yeah, here is the iPad there. I just turned it off. And then I guess what I would do is I would go into my devices, and then I would go into input device. Again, I'm connecting this via the iConnect MIDI 4, which is an interface. And then I'll just go to none and stand by for this change. You might hear something change in the background. One sec. All right. And that's pretty much it. We shouldn't hear it anymore. Let's see if this is true. No, it's still there. All right, let me just stop the playback on the iPad then. Play. Thank you. So yeah, guys, this is obviously the wild, wild west, and I should show you a hack. Regardless, look, we have time. I was planning on being here till a little past 11:30. So this is one way to do it, and I do want to show you a hack that can be helpful as well. So let me get another wire as I play this back. Give me one sec. All right. Hope you all are doing great. Thank you so much for being here. The next time I see you, looks like we're going into preferences, project settings. After that, I think we cover control surfaces. And guys, we're getting to the end of the line. This is absolutely amazing. In fact, here, do it with me. Thus far, we have covered everything, all the basics, connecting external devices, projects, tracks, recording, loops, arranging, editing. That was a great session. I remember that. There's been a lot of highs, there's been a lot of lows throughout this series. It's been such a journey to manage this and to be consistent and committed to the process overall. Probably my favorite of the bunch has been live loops, simply because nobody has covered it the way we have on this channel. And so that is just something that I know is going to help a lot of people. The step sequencer, also next level. You're not going to find the information anywhere else. Notation was hard because I just had never worked with that particular part of the program. Work in surround. We didn't cover surround because I don't have surround and I've never used it. And so that's just something that we're not going to do with the music notation editor. It's different. I had, very, very, very basic experience. And so I thought we could just cover it and still be committed to the process. The environment was great. Video and synchronization. And again, we're going to be going over preferences, project settings, and key commands. I believe that perhaps besides live loops, which is the most fun in my eyes, this is going to be the most useful. So tune in for this series coming Monday. Looks like we'll spend a little bit of time working with the touch bar. And even if you do not have a touch bar, I actually have a secondary solution, which is a free solution. So you're going to want to tune in for that. After that, we will wrap this whole shebang up by covering control surfaces and assigning hardware controllers. So we're getting to the end of the line. Again, if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much for just the chance. It's been absolutely amazing. I have seen such a positive response from all the great people out there, and you will be rewarded. Just believe me. I've got some great content coming for you very soon here. I believe it is the best content in the world, and I believe it'll absolutely change your Logic Pro workflow life. All right, so I want to show you a great workaround for those of you that maybe don't have all the technical stuff, but you have an iPad, you have an iPhone. So let's go to a blank screen here and let's type in audio MIDI setup. All right, you can see that I have the iPad connected via lightning cable. I'm sure this is something you could do with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to go straight in like to keep things very simple here. And you can see that this has now become an input in my system. I believe I will find it here somewhere. It could be wrong. Here it is, iPad. So now this has become part of my virtual studio. So if I go back to Logic and I open up my preferences, the iPad is now a weapon in my arsenal. So let me go and hit that. Let me enable this. Stand by for a sample rate change. Hold on. Okay, wait, check. Yes, all right. So then now you can see that I'm in the program, and this time I'm not going to use MIDI. I'm going to use audio for these purposes. So you got to make sure that the iPad is an input. Now for me, it's going to probably look a little different for you, but if I go into my inputs and outputs, I believe that this is only going to show you one input, then that's the iPad. I don't know for sure if this is transmitting in mono or stereo, but we will find out. And then right now I'm going to go to an app, not the one that we were using now. Let's do, I really like Launchpad by Novation, Amplify Music here. And so I'm going to record a signal. Again, this is input 1 and 2. The input is the iPad, and you should be able to record audio. Something that you probably should do just on the side, I should mention this as well, is just make sure that the BPMs are close enough. This I'm not talking about synchronization now. I'm just giving you a hack in case you don't know how to set up all the synchronization settings. I barely know anybody that does. I'm sure gentlemen like Edgar Rothermick would, but just in general, not everybody is going to know how to do this kind of stuff. And so rather than fret about it, why don't we just find a workaround, and an efficient one and a clever one at that. So let me just go ahead and get my iPad here up and running, and then I'll show you guys how I do this. So let me just hit this. All right. Okay, so we should be seeing an iPad coming up here. I'm not going to need that file anymore. Okay, so you guys are looking at Launchpad, really fun little app. I believe you're going to be able to hear this audio. Let's check this out. Yeah. Okay, now to help the cause per se, I want you to find the proper BPM. So this session I'm working on is 110. So I'm going to go to the metronome icon here, and then I will bump this up to 110. Okay, so I'm not doing any kind of synchronization. This is all manual. This is all kind of basic stuff. All right, so then I shift back into Logic, and I will call this Launchpad, right? And then you just want to make sure that the signal is coming through. So again, I will select a scene, if you will. We don't see anything happening. If you don't see anything happening, it's probably because of your software monitor here inside of preferences. Let me try recording this and let's see how it goes. So I'm going to hit R, make sure the tempo is on. 2, 3, 4. That didn't record for some reason. I wonder why. That should work quite nicely. Let me try it again. Let me delete that. Here. Audio. I wonder if it's because I have that other program open. Yeah, let me delete it really quick. I think that may be a factor here. Okay, so that is off. And let me hit record. Aha! Okay. So again, not ideal under all circumstances, but at least we have something that we can work with. For beginners, you might want to resize kind of off the grid by means of tick and get to that first initial transient. By the way, you don't have to do it that way. You can also hit Control X and then just find a happy medium in terms of a proper edit point. I think something like this would be good for our usages, right? And so then now we are completely automating this and just making it easy. And then going back to the beginning here, I'm going to use the pickup clock, which is semicolon, and then now we have this. All right, and for all my hard workers out there that are getting in the repetitions, at this point you would go into flex time, and of course you don't always have to overdo it. You can just quantize if it works. Fair warning, please be careful which flex mode you're using, because just because Logic is choosing automatic slicing for you does not mean that it's the best choice. In this case, I believe it can work, but I can also try out rhythmic, but slicing seems to be really good for drums. I just want to be clear that I don't want you to rely on it, that's all. So let's listen to this. And then again, if you want to start, doing your own thing, being creative, you can move hi-hats around. So what I'll do is I'll move this one over as well. Sweet. All right, team. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to serve and to be with you, to spend time together. I realize that this is not always going to be happening, and so I am enjoying the moment. I am just taking it in. Next time I see you, absolute game changer. You ready for the next level? You ready to understand this program in a way that you never even thought possible? Join me as we work on preferences, project settings, and key commands. Thank you so much for your time. Again, if you're interested in Logic Pro training, we have 10 free courses coming out. That's 10. Yeah, that's right. It's a lot. And it's going to be world-class entertainment and information. I'll see you guys later.